Hello and welcome to the Coaching Couch, or what I'm going to be calling it hopefully within a year's time. As you can see, I am joined by PAL, or as I've written down, Gregor Morton. So
Close enough. That's about as English pronunciation you can get. Yeah.
how is it, sir?
It's more of an than an or, which used
Morton.
on the Gregor, which really used to frustrate my parents when they'd hear all my school teachers and friends just Gregor.
Okay. I did it on the wrong name. I'm brilliant.
Kills me on the inside.
Where did the name PAL come from? You're just a friendly man.
No, God no. It came from, as most people still do, people taking the piss out of me for saying that I'm Scottish. And then pretending that, a lot of people on the east coast of Scotland use the word like pal as just like when they were speaking to someone or referring to people or whatever. So yeah, people just started taking the mick out of me by speaking in that accent. And then I thought my previous name, which I won't say what it was, I thought, I should probably change this with certain events going on in the world. And so they were doing that a lot, making that joke a lot. And I went, I'll pick that up. Yeah, it looks okay in the kill feed when I'm dying more than getting kills. And yeah, it just kind of stuck. And I genuinely think I've had it now for about 9 years.
Okay, damn.
9 years, 10 years.
It's not quite as imaginative as Tombizz, putting Tom and Biz mind together to create that. But, I think it's not bad. Now, something I always ask people is about their professional history. No. Now, I can guess have you played professionally at all?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay.
No, never.
Was there any game that you think maybe I could have done?
No,
was it not really
definitely not. There's games I want. I like the idea of playing professionally in, but no, I've always been way too hopeless at any actual competitive video games. I obviously played CS. That was what first got me into esports. Watching that quite early on, my first favorite team was like the Fnatic 2014 team.
Oh, same.
With kind of just from Pronax and then the end of his involvement in the team onwards.
JW Inferno Op.
Absolutely.
Everybody loved
absolutely. That. And then I carried on playing for a long time. I was always a big Battlefield player. Like the Battlefield series, I've had, I think, every single Battlefield game since 3. And played those a lot, but again, there was never a massive competitive scene. I didn't really know it existed for a while. And then, CS, I thought, I'll try and get good at this. And I got to like LEM, didn't really play much Faceit.
Definitely didn't get good at it then.
No, exactly. So, and then moved to Valorant and thought, there's this new game coming out, Riot's making it's going to be pretty big. I'll try and go pro in that maybe, just something that I'd be interested in. Because again, COVID was hitting and whatever. Got ranked at Silver 2 in the beta, and there was already pro teams getting signed to Liquid, and I went, how are these guys getting pro contracts when I've not even seen a tournament announced yet? Where can I sign up for these? Little did I know there was an entire UK esports scene and beyond that I'd never been a part of, and was definitely never good enough to be a part of. So
fair. Okay, I kind of wanted to go the other way then. Were you doing any other form of coaching before esports coaching? Because you give me the vibe of someone who was like, maybe a little league, like soccer coach, football coach.
Yeah, of sorts, yes. I'd done my sort of coaching experience comes from a bit of a mixture, really. Like the way I always put it down to is I played a lot of sports when I was younger, a lot of sports, especially rugby, which is obviously massive in the UK. I played that to a just short of professional level, almost played for my country at under 18-year-old level, age group level. And I was involved in high performance setups and sort of professional club setups. For about sort of 4.5 years, until I then went off to university and whatever. And then when I was at university, I was obviously studying, my degree was in philosophy and politics. So a lot of the stuff that I was really focused on was actually emotional control. That was what my dissertation was on stoicism. And I was enjoying finding, especially being more involved in the university rugby club as well, and being on a little bit more of a player advisor sort of role, sometimes to the club on how we could do stuff culturally, the role that maybe sort of mental performance stuff would have. And actually, I was nowhere near as qualified at the time, but I was learning from and picking up some stuff from a guy called Jack, who's actually, he worked with us whilst he was doing his master's degree in Edinburgh. then went away to Harlequins Rugby Club as a mental skills coach, and now works as the performance coach for Team Vitality's CS team. So I've had a weird
route.
It's a very, very weird route. But yeah, essentially my background came from playing a lot of sports in a quite high performance environment, going away, doing a bit of stuff at university, getting to practice and learn about certain things more around the mental and sort of physical performance side of stuff. And like anybody that knows me, I'll often tell at least a little bit about how I spent some time in the British Army. In the reserves, so only part-time, not doing anything interesting, but I got a fair bit of formal leadership training and etc. from there. So it's a weird mix between sports, military, and academic stuff, really.
Yeah, very similar in that regard.
Nothing to do with esports at all. Yeah, there's no difference.
My marketing degree was just as useful.
Yes.
I'm certain.
I'm not sure I'm using mine in the same way that anybody was hoping I would use my degree, but hey, yeah, my parents love that, I'm sure.
Okay, so I kind of then wanted to look at how you did end up in coaching, because you've been with BBL, Vitality, Fokus, Wylde, Fireflux, E-Masters, I am reading these, and Ever So Wavy Gang?
Ever So Wavy Gang, yeah. Yeah. So I ended up in coaching because I couldn't play. So I started playing in sort of 2020 for fun, put together my first team with some friends for a local Scottish event in September 2021. Played from then until I finished university and sort of graduated and I left in like end of May, June. And at that point, I realized, hey, I'm going to need some money now that I've graduated.
Money's always good.
Money's always useful, and obviously a lot of pressure from parents to go and do something useful with the education, which I still haven't done. But I then realized, hey, realistically, I'm not going to be... I gave myself sort of 6 months or whatever to try and get something from esports. Yeah. And I was never going to do that as a player. I knew that. So I made the jump to coaching, knowing I'd probably be better suited to it and make more money in the short term. And I sent a message to an Irish guy that I knew called Shano, who no longer works in the industry, but definitely could have been working in VCT well before a lot of the rest of us, and is probably one of the greatest people I've ever met in esports. And he said, yeah, sure, I'm going to be running trials for a project. Jump in and you can learn a bit from me and whatever. He'd been coaching previously for that very well-renowned org 10-star before, as well as some others. And so I jumped in, learned from him, took over some of the trials at a point where he had to be moving into a house, and basically started running the trials from there. We entered a competition, came 5th, I think, when we should have done better. And then I jumped across a team who had beaten us or had done better, which was Ever So Wavy Gang, which was just a UK and Ireland mix. And I basically started head coaching them for a couple of months. We then got picked up by the also very well-renowned org of E-Masters, and fantastic professionalism at that level of esports. And then we ended up actually doing quite well in the sort of tier 3 promotion tournament, basically. Outperforming, I remember it was Le Petit Bouffon we beat, which I think at the time had Link, Cray, Russ, Luzzer, and Brody on it. We beat them, albeit we choked the upper and lower finals and lost them in the lowers. But we outplaced the Barbers, which had like Eccles, Cryptics, Meadow on it. Defo, I think, as well at one point. So yeah, it was the hell of a experience just jumping straight into coaching, and then basically 6 months later you're playing against some of these former tier 1 pros, and it kind of all spiraled us out, I suppose, uphill from there, really.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. You ended up with, like, I think Wylde was probably, looking back, one of those teams that I look at and go, oh shit, on paper, this team actually looks unreal. Like, we're talking about Hype, Foxy, Magic, Hero, and Savire. Savire, I think, is the only one who I don't know. But other than that, everybody else is either tier 1, tier 2. Like, very good. And a lot of those tier 2 people are people that I think could easily be in tier 1.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. Wylde roster, I came in just before Split 2 started, with 10 days to go, basically to fix the mess that was that team. And I don't think any of those guys would mind me saying that, because it was a bit of a mess. And it was basically a case of resetting and going, right, guys, we all want to be here. sure, things haven't worked out. There's not been emotional things, interpersonal relationships haven't been managed in the way that they should have done. Okay, if everybody wants to be here, then let's go again. We've got the talent, we know what we're capable of doing, and let's actually get to work. And I appreciated the buy-in that all 5 of those guys gave me, and the trust. And yeah, I learned a lot from the people in that team. Could see just how ridiculously talented someone like Hero was and still is. And then we kind of we did overperform given the amount of time that we had and the league that we were in. We came up against SBG, which was then went on to be Gentlemates, who then went on to win Ascension that year, which was a very difficult matchup. But I learned a lot from losing in the semi-finals to them, and that kind of called the end of our journey. But yeah, I was very happy that we took together as a group what was a bit of a mess that no one really wanted to be a part of, and turned it into something that everybody openly said as pretty much as soon as our game was done and we've been eliminated, I'm really proud to be a part of this. Guys, I hope that everybody gets what they want from the off-season moving forward, etc., etc. So just on both a professional in terms of games won or not won, and also on a personal thing, I think that was a big achievement for us all.
So before we move on to current times, I think there's one other team that I think took up probably the longest time, and that was Fokus.
Yeah.
That was the team that I think me as sort of like an outsider to that roster looked at for a long time and went, this team should do something. Like really, I think every time I see Lewis, that is pretty much the testament we come to. Is like this year, like this year,
maybe.
I think that is definitely a roster that you go back over the last 2 years, and maybe every player that was on there could have got into Tier 1.
Do we want to clarify which roster of the 4 that was for that year? The off season one that we played with Red Bull Homeground with. Yes, that roster. That roster for probably the rest of my career will remain as one of the most enjoyable, fun to work with, and genuinely game smart rosters I've ever had the pleasure of working with. On a personal level, they are also now all very close friends of mine. I think myself, Johnny, and the 5 players knew what we had. We knew how well things were going in the game, of course, but also most importantly out of the game in terms of the culture, the standards that we had, the behaviours we accepted and didn't accept, and just the attitudes of all the players involved. I will never forget going away with those boys to Istanbul and genuinely having a fantastic time both in and out of the server. Really taking it to foot on, I think it was 3 out of the 4. I mean, we played them, 4 maps. We were pretty close on 3 out of the 4 maps.
I will give one caveat.
Yeah.
Was that with Geist?
No. Hold on a minute. That guy is incredible. Now you're sounding like management.
He was playing.
He was playing in the
instead
grand
of
finals.
Mr. Farlin.
Yes. Yeah. When Mr. Farlin was playing, we still gave him a very close game, 16-14 overtime on Haven. But no, that initial roster is, and for anybody that knows me, will tell you how big of a fan I am of those guys, just as people more than anything else. And then obviously things changed, things that we weren't really, we weren't at all in control of, and we moved then we were supposed to play in the Polaris League. We then moved to the DACH League, and therefore the region requirements on the roster changed. And so we had to make some changes to the roster. That is, again, to this day, and probably hopefully for the rest of my career, the most heartbreaking thing I've ever had to do. And yeah, I still feel a lot of guilt about those 2 calls that I had to have with 2 of the guys that night. That'll still sting for a long time. But we did absolutely everything we could in a very short space of time to get some new players in, get them involved with the culture that we had, the atmosphere that we had, etc. And I still, to this day, am very happy about. I mean, we changed 2 players after that. We then changed another one going into the first split of the stage. And I'm still really happy that every person we've picked up, I've really enjoyed working with. Like the character of the people that we picked up, irrelevant of the stuff in the game, of this is John, Matrix, and Azuri. I really, really enjoyed spending my time with all of those guys, and I think that was one of the biggest selection criteria for us at the time, and for me generally, is how good are the people that we're going to work with.
Fair. Well, I kind of want to now move on to where we are right now.
Yes.
Which is, I'm pretty sure I spoke to you just before you ended up on BBL.
Yeah.
And it was very much it's this year or it's bust.
Oh, well, I was done. Yeah. No, I got rejected from a number of applications to other teams, or didn't make it all the way through the interview process for mostly head coach positions. But it was made clear that, I can do something else. I can fill in another role in the coaching staff, but wasn't successful in a number, both here and NA and Americas and Pacific as well. And yeah, I also then didn't get any in tier 2. Fokus had moved on, they'd found somebody, and I then got no offers in tier 2 that were going to be financially sustainable enough for me to carry on doing it. So I had resigned myself to, that's my esports career done in end of September, beginning of October. And I was doing job applications, looking to do interviews, etc., for other non-esports industry careers. So I thought I was done, which I was ready for, but I always knew would be very bittersweet. Yeah. And then the BBL opportunity opened up, did the interview process, passed that, the trial process, etc. And then, October the 13th, I started with them basically. And then we ended up here.
Yeah. Oh, and I kind of wanted to talk through, because I believe part of the team was done by the time you joined?
Yeah, most of it. Yeah, okay. Most of it.
So I kind of looking at the players that you had, because I think that we'll get into what actually happened over this split, but like looking at the players you had when you got there, what were your expectations? Because obviously there was a world, we already kind of knew the world that Chiwa wasn't going to be there.
Yes, yeah.
That it got very messy even after that point, but let's just say at the very beginning, you're looking at the team, what did you think of what was there, and then what did you add? Because I believe Chiwa was one of the things you suggested.
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't have particularly high expectations overall. I didn't know a huge amount. I knew some stuff about Profek. Obviously, he'd been scoring pretty well in tier 2. Sociable, I'd worked with, or I'd been involved in a team with very, very briefly at the end of my time with Fireflux. Leven, I didn't really know anything about. Nobody did really, apart from stats look okay in the Turkish league. And then Yampi's obviously Yampi.
Yeah.
Hadn't performed particularly well last year. Had played a very, 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 very mixed role that wasn't necessarily great for him now, looking back in hindsight. And he was going to be this. He was going to be this IGL. Coming from a long history of Team Liquid, who are renowned for their top level IGLing. I hope nobody minds me saying that, but
it's going all right now.
It is. Nats is doing a superb job by the looks of it. But yeah, I'm looking at that going, there's massive language differences, there's massive cultural differences, which I think to me is a more important thing than language differences. Language can be learnt, cultural differences are a little bit more difficult to reconcile. And you've got a very, very wide range of personalities in that team, of which many I wasn't familiar with. So we came in and we were trialing. Leven was actually going to play Sentinel for a long time. That was when I came in, that was what he was going to be playing. And he is a good Sentinel player because the boy can shoot, as we've seen. And in his words, he doesn't use his brain when he plays Duelist, but he does when he plays Sentinel. Those are his words exactly, which is fair enough, and it's true a lot of the time.
Hey, for some Duelists, that's a plus.
That is a plus a lot, and has been for us at some points this stage. But we were looking to really fill out that fifth player on the roster, and we trialed a bunch of Duelists and whatever, and I think some underperformed based on what we expected in trials. Some performed to the level we thought they would, but weren't quite what we thought was needed. And And realistically, we were one of the last teams to put our roster together. So we were fairly behind the mark. A lot of people had already, they'd been trialed already, had gone off to other teams, etc. The pull of perhaps other teams in the league was greater than ours. And so we were kind of looking around going, right, what can we do to fill this last bit? And for me, a big thing about my team building process is striking a balance with the personalities and specifically how vocal people are within the sort of the in-game system that I have in mind. Which should go as a bit of a no-brainer to most coaches or most people playing at this level, but it's really, really important in my mind. I was looking at this team going, I think we're a bit on the quiet side. This last player, we need to get in someone who can actually take that up a level. You've also got an inexperienced IGL. You don't have a Sadak that you can bring in and build a system around. You don't have a Boaster that's been running his system and way of doing things for a long time. Okay, we probably need someone that's going to be able to facilitate that less experienced IGL's calling in some sort of way. Okay, you need someone that's got high energy. You need someone that's pretty vocal in the games and has a decent understanding of macro strategy. Are there any duelists like that? No, probably not. None that can shoot well enough. And we were looking at the trials, and I specifically remember saying to the guys, is Levin not just going to be the best duelist we could possibly find? And everyone kind of went, yeah, probably. So we turned our attention to Sentinel players instead. I was a big fan of Chiwa. I'd worked with him briefly before. Profek had worked with him or knew him before as well. And I remember the question being sort of from management or whatever, like, this guy's getting on a bit. He hasn't played a huge amount. He obviously played in Ascend, etc. But is he still dedicated enough?
Yeah.
And me and Profek just went, yeah, you boys are about to find out. And has absolutely since blown everybody away with just how much he is willing to give for the team and in his own belief that he absolutely deserves to be at this level and playing here in Berlin. So yeah, most of the roster had been sorted, but there were a couple of sort of finishing the system in a way that made sense, things that needed to be done, and I think Chiwa was absolutely the right choice for that.
Okay, fair enough. I kind of wanted to then bring up. Well, I guess, no, before I bring up the problems, I want to talk a little bit about Marqnue as well. Because he's someone that I know, especially within the Turkish scene, he is very highly rated. Like, you'll have members of, like, I will say there's not many circumstances where I'll see Foot and BBL really complement each other. Yes. But when you see, I think you had the general manager of Foot, like, literally going, Marqnue is the guy. Like, he's the guy who's sort of, like, brought up a lot of the young talent. You're talking about the likes of Woot as well, like coming over. Yedajay was under him at a time. So when you got into that team working with him, what was sort of like your thoughts of coming in under him?
Well, it definitely needed we needed a bit of time because we'd worked together before. When he was on Fireflux, he'd taken a step back and was playing more of a managerial role at the time. So I didn't have loads of one-to-one contact, but obviously, he was in charge of the then academy team, the Fireflux Young, that they then took Yedajay and Woot from. And I obviously knew his reputation in the Turkish scene of, kind of somewhat storied CS players, being around for a long time, has that sort of TAC FPS experience. And we basically came in both quite open. I remember in the interview, sort of him asking me like, "Oh, how are you seeing the game?" I explained my philosophy and whatever. And he said, "Yeah, no, I like that. That's what I want." And he actually said in the interview, right there and then, no, he said to the manager, "Right, no, this is what I want," which I really, really appreciated that vote of confidence from him. It was just about us sitting down and trying to, throughout the off season, throughout the quite a long boot camp that we had in Istanbul. We then had Red Bull. We then had the Monsters Reloaded event as well. Just spending those sort of couple of months figuring out how best to work together, how to get that sort of coaching system going, and just learning, how to communicate best with one another. And then sort of from the beginning of our sort of second pre-season training block, from after that Monsters Reloaded, beginning of December through to when we moved here in January, we then basically said, right, cool, these are our roles, or this is what we're responsible for, rather than our roles. I think a big thing for the two of us is, we just go, okay, what's the specialisms? Right, let's focus on that. Let's make sure we're both doing the things that we're best at, and then we continue that on into kickoff, basically.
Okay. Now, I do want to get on to... I think there's one problem that everyone knew about.
Yes.
So I feel like going into a deep dive into, Chi was not there, Vac's not there. I don't think that is news.
Yeah, we had a visa problem. We had to get a sub. We had to get a sub.
But then you also had other problems. Because I remember... I'm going to show a clip of it maybe here, which is when you recorded the vctemea video...
Yes.
There seemed to be a few other people missing.
Yeah, so when we did the first media day, I remember doing some, obviously we had photo shoots, individual stuff, but then we also, all the teams had sort of individual team shoots that then went into the promotion. They had a horse. That was cool. We had a little bonsai tree to snip away.
And Yampi talking Turkish.
And Yampi talking Turkish, which actually I will say he really can do, and has surprised me a lot. His Turkish is genuinely quite good. What wasn't as great was perhaps having your assistant coach and two guys from the media team who happened to be wearing black hoodies on the day, standing with their backs to the camera, so to kind of make it look like it was 5 BBL players. It wasn't. We had 2 and a coach because we were not able to get people the necessary entry documents into the country to arrive at the right time, and therefore no one could bring the jerseys from Istanbul, and so we were wearing our hoodies and whatever, and it was fine. We obviously, management had taken care of that. They let Riot know in advance, but obviously we were coming very early in the new year, and some people were on holiday, some people weren't on holiday, so lines of communication were muddled at some points. But yeah, I think BBL management did everything they could do kind of on the ground outside of just waiting with their hands tied from legal stuff or governmental stuff. And yeah, we then rocked up to film some stuff with 2 players and a coach.
Well, you had I think the timeline was genuinely, even with not including Chiwa, the timeline was down to like...
It was tight.
A couple of days?
It was less than that, yeah. I think we had our first game against Giants on the 15th. And I think the guys arrived... Did they arrive the night before? Or was it the day before? That was on the Wednesday, no. And I think they arrived on the Monday night. And the game was on the Wednesday early evening. So it was kind of just under 48 hours before we played our first game. We got the guys in to then set up their stuff that night, practice day, or sort of like pre-official day, sort of simulation day we call it. The next day, get them used to setups and whatever, and then we then went and played Giant X the next day basically. And yeah, that was without the Chiwa situation, which again was fairly tight because we had 2.5 days with Vac to get him before we played Giant X, to get him introduced to everything that he needed to know to play officials. So yes, that was a little bit stressful for me. Chiwa did a fantastic job though, actually, of really helping me out with getting Vac involved, teaching him the role, going into a bit more detail about how he made certain decisions at times, and I could take him through our strategic styles on both sides and what the setups were, what the defaults were, etc., etc. But yeah, that was a bit stressful.
I now want to look at strategy, because I feel like you don't normally get coaches to sort of go into, well, they're not going to give me what they're about to do, so I'm going to get you to give me what you've already done.
Okay.
And I kind of wanted to start things off by kind of looking at what you ended up doing over on Pearl, because I think for me at least, coming into the season, you had a player missing.
Yep.
You had a player coming in on a Sentinel who I don't think was maybe grinding quite as much as Chiwa had been.
No, yeah.
And so going in, I was like, okay, they're going to make their comps basic. Like, it's going to be simplistic stuff because you're bringing in a guy who hasn't been able to practice. And then you threw in this comp, which I'm going to show for everybody at home.
Yes.
That's not a basic comp, pal. That is a comp that revolves around Yoru, Vice, Chamber. Like
Yes.
I would call it insanity. And you said, how much practice did you say you had?
Well, we'd practiced the comp for a while. We had little to no time to make any changes around VAC, so he was shoehorned in and was taught on the fly how to play his role within this comp. This is one of the ideas that myself and Scott have been discussing quite a lot in the off-season. He in particular deserves a lot of credit for this comp, and especially the level of...
Just for
correct, yeah. He's the analyst. He also does... I mean, he's a lot more active than an analyst would be would be assumed to be, that's for sure. He is exceptionally good when it comes to strategy, and also is more than capable and has done a lot of the one-to-one stuff with players as well, especially around their roles within maps. We'd been discussing sort of ideas like this for a while. I know he'd had discussions with others before we were involved in the team, and we really wanted to bring together. This was actually done at the request of Yampi, who said, "Okay, certainly in this very focused or short format tournament, I kind of want to have just a map that we can catch people off with, or the people don't expect, or is us experimenting a little bit." And a lot of teams do that. And I sort of jumped in and went, I think we have a great idea for that. You put Levin on Yoru, you put Sociable on Chamber, and there was a lot of back and forth between. I know Marqnue wanted to put Yampi on Chamber and see a revival of that. I think we decided in the end that maybe with Yampi's new IGLing role, that would we'd put him on something a little bit different. We really wanted to focus on, okay, what can kind of counter the most standard way of playing the map a lot of the time, what really leans into sort of 2025 or early 2025 agent strengths, and something that allows us to go a little bit out of the box while still making a lot of sense, and leaning into our individual player strengths, basically.
Okay. So this composition is kind of a composition breaker then?
Yeah, it's a bit of a composition. It's a mix between a composition or play style, like meta counter, and also hey, we've got some people who are probably quite good on these agents. Let's go and put this quite good in theory comp into practice and see how it goes for us, basically.
So one round in particular.
Yes.
I think you already know what round it is because I absolutely lost my shit. So I kind of just
everybody's favorite.
I want you to talk to me about Sociable, because I think that going into this sort of tournament, you're talking about a 28-year-old who's come into the tier 1 for the first time, and he's playing Sova. He was never really a Sova player, at least if you look historically.
Yes.
Then he aced the team with a Marshall. Is this something you saw from him the second that he was in the team, and you knew he could do this?
Yeah,
this
he can do this sort of stuff day in, day out. From any one scrim in any one round, you always know he's capable of it because he is an incredibly skilled player. This round in particular, I think, was just a fantastic highlight of his level of confidence, irrelevant of any round state that we're in, and how he will always favour just, I can be the one that makes the difference in this round, and I want to be the one that makes the difference in this round. He's exceptionally good. He's played the game for a long time with any kind of weapons. You see him knocking off people with a headhunter. You see him doing it with a Marshall, with the buy the BBL Classic at the end, which I know is from your previous post on social media, one of your favourites. And it's just one of those moments of, obviously, Mr. Pipson not too happy. Genuinely caught me off guard, because that's not something you expect to see in officials. But yeah, he's absolutely got the skill to do that, and multiple times again this year at the highest level, because the level of competition doesn't faze him. He knows he deserves to be here in a lot of ways, and he wants to absolutely prove that to a lot of people.
I think it is one of those things, though, where you look at, like, I guess a lot of the aging players within Valorant, and they don't play like him.
No.
Like, you're talking about people of a similar age. You're talking about people like Boaster, who is like, okay, he's this cerebral leader
Yes.
whose goal is to set everybody else up, still trying to have an individual level that's enough, but not to he's not going into each game like, I need to outshine Alpha yet.
Yeah.
Sociable is going into each game,
Yeah,
or at least the way he played that.
Yeah, he wants to. He'd quite happily outshine everybody in the league if we gave him everything. And there are many points, and I think he's proven that certainly in terms of individual skill, he is capable of doing that a lot of the time, which is a lot of fun to watch, as you can see from our reactions.
Yeah. I like and dislike that clip because I set it up by going, why is he not using the headhunter? Why has he got the marshal? And then immediately gets a multi-frag with the marshal, and that it was amazing.
Don't think you're the only one he made look stupid. Don't worry.
So I now want to move on to Abyss, because I think your game versus Giant X, I think they have a lot of talented players, but I don't think people were like, okay, they're now on the map. They were like, okay, they beat Giant X.
Yes.
But I think the game versus Fnatic was where you were properly on the map, and I think that kicked off with Abyss, which for me was even more of a map of, it seemed like you were trying to disrupt them with what they were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially against Fnatic, we came in with the game plan of, these guys are very good. I think anybody that disagrees with how capable Fnatic are with the way that they play and the talent that they have is probably on something. And whilst a lot of the time we say, right, especially at this level with new players coming in, there has to be a little bit of a level of healthy disrespect towards the other team, but you have to also acknowledge what other teams' strengths and weaknesses are. And absolutely, the game plan was, if we let them carry on playing the game the way they want to play it, they have proven for many years now they're very good and they're probably going to win. So let's have a look at adjusting what we have slightly. Getting in their face, making it as messy as possible, making them as stressed as possible, putting them under as much pressure as constantly as possible, because we back ourselves to win those open play, chaotic situations with some of the structure that we do have or did have at the time. We wanted to disrupt them because there's no point letting them play their game, otherwise they will leave very few holes for you to work your way back into that game.
Well, yeah. What you did in this game was make them change their comp for the next game.
Yes.
But I wanted to show you some of the screenshots, because I think the map alone in this game tells you all you need to know about your game plan.
Okay, nice.
Because most of these screenshots were within 5 or 10 seconds of the round. So this first one is Loon all the way at the bottom of mid within the first few seconds. And we can basically just go through this in similar fashion. 5 seconds in, he's taken A main control. I think it was this round again, already pushed all the way up in A main within the first few seconds. And I think this round in particular was, he pushed mid.
Yes.
Then another player pushed mid. And then a third player pushed mid. And you did win that round. And I think a lot of it came off the back of
Sociable double kill. Yeah, absolutely, over the top.
But that seemed to be like pretty much the deciding factor of this game, was every time Fnatic came for any sort of like setup play, they didn't even get that far. They were already in their face. And although it was very hit and miss, like me and Mitch, I remember the quote was try again. Because it just seemed like Levin was willing to just fight them anywhere on the map. Yeah,
I mean, that's a big thing about especially how we were playing generally in kickoff. I think I can say this a bit now because it's done. We came in, I'd kind of outlined a fairly clear strategic style on both attack and defense for the short form kickoff tournament. That's also going to be our first tournament with young, inexperienced rookie. Not young, inexperienced at VCT or rookie VCT players. It's going to be their first games on stage properly in front of the crowd. So the way that we played kind of reflected the requirements of both of those two things and play a part in how I'm looking at progressing the strategy over the year. But you see perfect examples of that, of you've got a team who is very used to adapting on the fly, knowing their system super well, can also have a huge amount of experience across their roster. So I think this was probably the most extreme example of that. we need to get in their face. We need to play to set our duelist up early to be able to get into advantageous situations and to give us something to work with in the round. Because again, against Fnatic, especially on that map, if you're not looking to do something defensively that is going to gain you that advantage in the round, if you let them get that upper hand, they're very good at then finishing off the round based on that advantage. So whether it was a numbers advantage, whether it was a space advantage, we went in with the intention of we need something out of this early round that puts them onto the back foot, that forces them to perhaps either rework to sort of equalize that advantage, whether it's getting a kill, whether it's retaking a certain bit of valuable space, whether it's trading some sort of space of equal value, or they have to change their plan and start to move into and put a lot of pressure on the mid-round calling across the team of, right, what's your plan B? What's your backup if you don't get that advantage that you're perhaps used to?
I kind of wanted to ask as well, how much of what was happening was Levin making a decision and the team backing him up, and how much of it was a game plan from the beginning, like, okay, you're going to do this in this round, and we have this supportive utility, or him going, I'm doing this round, support me?
Yeah. It wasn't too much of the latter. We built around a lot of our ideas, certainly our micro stuff, around, hey, here's a bunch of options. Yeah. Okay, here's how we execute the options in quite specific detail. Okay, Yampy, or if it's Levin, or if it's somebody else, right? Here's here's sort of the use conditions, right? When we want to call these sort of things, these plays. Without going into too much about how I game plan, it's how's best to put this. It isn't quite as strict as, hey, this is exactly what you need to do on round 3. This is what you're going to do on round 4. But it's a little bit looser than that. It's a little bit more related to the macro and what we want to work on or sort of play with in terms of leverage with the perhaps either stylistic or comp matchups overall early on in the half. So once they have that overall intention from us as coaching staff, and Yampy understands what he wants to kind of be achieving, then it's kind of on him to go, right, I've got my team, I've got my guys, we're going to pick the most appropriate options for what we see in front of us, basically.
Okay.
So yeah, a little bit of Levin. I think there'll be a lot more of Levin going, guys, I'm going to cook them, I'm doing this, let me go.
This was the round I wanted to finish this little segment on, because we sort of mentioned you were doing this throughout the game. Round 12 defensive side, obviously the last defensive round was by far the most successful
of
all of the rounds. And you actually told me about this, like what he was saying in those moments, because it definitely seemed like he didn't want to give this up.
No, he absolutely didn't want to give this up. So again, we'd made this or very similar plays for mid control early. He obviously gets the number advantage. He gets the space advantage as well, which is more than valuable enough. And then he's just saying in the comms, I'm not giving this up. Like I want more. I'm not letting them have this. He obviously takes the swing and finds crashes as well. And then he sat there trying to take the duel with Boaster. And I remember going in my head, I love the confidence, mate. But we're now 5v3 and we've got all mid control. Probably about time to get out, which thankfully he eventually does. And to be fair, Fnatic, they give a fairly good job of then trying to re-clear a lot of that space really, really quickly and kind of neutralize that space advantage. But then sometimes in this game, you just get those moments of one player hitting the shots when it counts on stage.
You did also crush Mitch's dreams after this, because he had the line.
It was a great line.
He's the lunatic, and then he went, his name's Levin. And you see it in his eyes, he goes, shit.
That's not one that I can use anymore. Yeah, exactly.
Well, sort of moving on from this segment, I guess, on the strategy, I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit about your overall compositions, because I think a lot of teams focused a lot on Teo. Like that was a huge part. You even ruined Fnatic's Teo comp on that map in particular. But you didn't. It was something that came in once. I think you look at some of the players that you have, I think a sociable is prime real estate for a Teo, very aggressive in the way he likes to play. What was it that you went, okay, we tried it once, wasn't the best. We don't want to do this again.
Yeah, there wasn't too much testing involved. I think the biggest reason why we just didn't have him involved really was mostly because of the situation we were in logistically.
Okay.
Teo comes out. We've got a very short amount of time whilst we know there's visa issues going on for a lot of the squad. Then we have to make a player change. Do we really want to be changing comps from what we've been practicing, given there's so many other things to try and manage? No. We know what we have is good. Sure, we need to be able to adapt to what Tejo brings and how we need to play around it in particular. But let's not overcomplicate our jobs. Let's aim for just doing our stuff well and go from there. I mean, I'd spent a fair bit of time in server, as had Scott. I think obviously everybody in the team had a look just to figure out what he was about. And we'd had discussions with other friends, etc., about like how strong we think this agent is on first day release, etc. And whilst there's a lot of people seem to have just jumped on the Teo train. Certainly early in this year,
DRX,
Sentinels,
every map,
a lot of Americas. Yeah, I think there's a lot of novelty value to be found there that we weren't in a position to get. But I'm not sure how long that will last.
Okay.
So we'll see. Obviously, now we have a new agent coming out, etc. Everybody gets to readjust to what seems to be emerging as this kind of early 2025 meta. And of course, we've been reflecting on that as well. But yeah, we weren't really in a position to... We could have made our lives a little bit more difficult and taken a bit of agency away and perhaps confidence even away from the players, even if we did have some good ideas from a coaching perspective. But again, at the end of the day, you want those guys on stage, having confidence in what they're doing, having practiced it. And they were already pretty good at the comps that we were running, as they kind of proved, really.
But the thing I want to say, though, is then I feel like Vice is on the other side of the coin, because... Although I'm sure you had more time to sort of flesh out Vice because it was released before, it wasn't like a 2-week deal, you didn't have the player who played Vice. So, because obviously when Vac was playing last, Vice was not in the game.
Yes.
So that would have been something he had to pick up. What was it with Vice that you went, this is worth the gamble over Teo?
Vice plays a fantastic role. I will say I'm pretty sure Vac hadn't played any Vice or had played next to no Vice at all before he jumped in with us in like the first scrims.
How many days did he have to learn?
2.5. Two practice days and a lot of conversations with me and Shiwa. But Vice, especially in her current state, is, as I think everybody can see, incredibly strong. She has the best stall in the game by far with the then reworked Razor Vines. The wall becomes incredibly valuable against how a lot of people were playing, sort of certainly in last year's style, if you use it in the right ways. And we were fairly confident that, albeit I don't think we definitely didn't execute on some of our maps, but we've got a pretty clear vision for how we want to execute that with that execute use of that piece of utility. But she also then plays into this more information or more active information taking Sentinel role in a lot of ways, perhaps more so than you would with a Killjoy, more similar to a Cypher. And you get this nice balance of, I can still play like heavy stall, I can still contest for spaces that we want to be contesting for in front of our choke points, etc. But you then get the added value of, you get an extra bit of initiation util on your attack side. You get something that is going to good flashes that can double up as punish to help with punish setups or to get information. And so there's a lot of the agent that, with the updates they added in and how you see a lot of teams playing around the world at the moment, we just went, this is a little bit too strong to ignore. We understand quite clearly how we want to play the agent. So let's just focus on not changing anything for 4 people and just spending our time instructing this new guy on how we want him to play that, basically.
Okay. Well, before we move on, I've got one more question. So in EMEA, I believe it was every single agent was played at some point.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Was there any agent that either got a bit more playtime or not as much as you might have expected them to?
I think a lot of people were talking about Deadlock, or people had quite high expectations of Deadlock getting played a lot. I think outside of KC, there wasn't a huge amount of Deadlock being played. Be interested to see if there any...
Wait for Ascent.
Yeah, any future changes, map pool wise or agent balance wise will change that. I think certainly in Americas and Pacific, the amount of Tejo we saw surprised me a lot. I think the amount of Yoru that we saw definitely didn't surprise me. I think we did see a bit of a fall off though of Gecko in particular. I think if you look at 24 going into 2025, just looking at what agents were most prevalent, you're not seeing as much Gecko, you're not seeing as much KO, you're definitely not seeing as much Neon.
Was played 3 times.
Yeah, which is not mostly surprising with the changes that who can definitely play Neon for sure. And then I think obviously the biggest change that we saw meta-wise is definitely the Killjoy. Like the introduction of Tejo just nuking in a lot of ways, quite literally, the effectiveness of Killjoy. So I think there was some that we saw more than I expected, but a lot of it was just okay. Yeah, everybody seems to be roughly moving in a similar direction. Some faster than others, with what agents aren't getting played a lot of the time.
Right, and now for my favourite section of this entire interview, something completely different to everything we've discussed so far, and something I am calling PAL Core, which really does sort of like have a pretty hefty range. Going from the love of your inspirational sort of like quotes, that could have gone anywhere.
That was
to the love
anywhere.
of a lot of very different things. But I want to start by showing some, obviously, I think this one was made by Billy but tweeted by Profek, which is obviously some of your Valentine's Day
so this was made and tweeted by Billy, the first one, back in 2020, was it 2020? No, 2023. She posted that, and then was very proud of it then. And then she thought it needed, after it got stolen by Profek for a game day tweet,
needs a new one.
Who searched very far down because he wanted Billy's timeline. So had he seen
it before?
No. So he was just going, who do I know that might have some funny pictures of PAL that I can post? went down Billy's timeline. And then found that from 2023 and used it, without her consent, of course, and didn't even give her the follow, which I think was what frustrated her most.
A bit toxic.
And then absolutely, I mean that's Profek in a nutshell, in a good way. And then Billy brought out the second one for this year as a kind of 2-year anniversary of the original tweet.
So it's I will say, firstly, there's been a lot of this sort of stuff. I think BBL fans have really jumped on this. My personal favourite, and I'm going to have to mute the audio because I will lose any money on my video if I play it. But it's this one. It's you to Justin Bieber.
Yeah, which is not something I ever thought would be happening. I don't think it's something that anybody thought would ever be happening. But hey.
What do you think of it? What do you think of all this? Because this one obviously was requested by Ash, but was created
by someone who works with BBL in socials, who I've spent many days with, filming content in Istanbul with him. He's a great guy. Didn't think he was actually going to make this, and then he did make it, and then forgot about it for a while. What do I think about all this? Obviously, it's very complimentary in a lot of ways. I'm a little bit worried for people.
I did watch the PAL reading BBL comments
Yeah,
video.
yeah. I wasn't sure that was ever going to get posted, but eventually it got greenlit by BBL management. That was...
Some people really like your like pauses and the way you talk to the players.
Much more than the players do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean it's obviously nice. It definitely makes me feel pretty uncomfortable. I'm not the sort of person to fully just embrace it and launch into it either.
Well, I think people literally, the quote was that your strats make them horny. I think that was an actual quote.
Which I suppose could be counted as a performance bonus, maybe not. Maybe it reduces from the amount of focus. But yeah, it's definitely fairly surreal for me. If you'd asked me 6 months ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, do you see yourself being sat in a situation where you've got a lot of people engaging with what you do in this kind of way? No, absolutely not. Surely there's far more interesting people that they can be discussing in this way. But yeah, I mean it's nice, of course.
Well, on the more sort of like, I guess, serious side of it, which is the stuff that the EMEA account, I think you've become a favourite of the socialist team, because you are giving a lot of these sort of like almost like motivational, inspirational speeches to your players.
Oh, like, somewhat motivational, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of like, we can be the best, all of this sort of stuff. So I kind of wanted to dive away from the memes and more to that and say like, is that something that you've used in previous teams that you feel like brings out certain results, or just in moments where maybe things are going wrong, sometimes it's not the strategy that will fix things, but more the motivation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the last of those. I've seen in this game, it's such a high variance esport in terms of results not being what people expect, in terms of individual player or team performances not being what anyone on the outside or the inside expect a lot of the time. And it is like sports in that way of you do have a massive impact from how much do people want to be there in that moment winning, and therefore how focused can they be on doing the right things. And as much as I have had to put a lot of time and a lot of work into developing my strategic knowledge and how I want to play the game, one thing that I've, again, from the previous stuff that I did and have experience with, is that more interpersonal, motivational leadership aspect of things, like the more traditional leadership sort of or style of it, I suppose. A lot of people do just take the piss out of me for just a rugby guy that just happened to be telling people how to play a video game, which is kind of what happens. But yeah, I think it's I've seen, especially I spoke about it a bit with last year with Fokus guys, of so many things in what we do can affect our mentality without us even realizing. Not in a way of people are not motivated, or people are not don't want to be there, etc., etc. And there's nobody I've ever worked with that's ever had that kind of, I can't really be bothered. But the big difference between esports and sports that I think I've seen is, I think there's a lot of ground esports players have to make up with intensity, intensity of mindset, intensity of their focus in particular, so both the long term and the short term, especially when it comes to a game day. Like, I'm very used to physical sports where there is a genuine value to getting very fired up and getting your blood flowing and whatever. In esports, you don't need that. In fact, I much prefer doing the opposite. There's a lot of you need to be calmer. You need to be more clear thinking.
So you need to coffee then.
No, that's no. Ideally not before an official. No, and that you need to have that clarity and focus and control in the moment, rather than just sort of reckless aggression as you have outside in sports sometimes. But in order to have that, you still need an intensity of focus on, I'm doing the right things, I want to be here, I want to win. There's still a huge amount of room for a competitive fire within these players. And sometimes, you feel like the guys are losing that, or they're too focused on something else, they're overthinking things. And And yeah, sometimes it just needs a little bit of a reminder of these are games where the perfect gameplay is probably never going to happen. The macro strategy, the this, the that, the whatever, is not going to be sufficient if you can't get the individual and sort of micro scale team play stuff right. And all that comes down to is them executing the skill sets they have to an appropriate level. And all that comes down to is kind of how much do they want it and how much can they deal with the environment they're in and still deliver that individual performance. So yeah, sometimes, albeit I very rarely shout or show a huge amount of emotion because I think it's important when they're just hearing my comms in timeouts or in sort of half times, etc., that they need to get a feeling of calmness and control, that we're always in control. But yeah, there are sometimes I will remind them of the situation they're in and how much of an impact they can have on that, and ask them to go and do only the things that they want to be doing, really.
And then that gets clipped and put on Twitter.
And then it gets clipped and put on Twitter or YouTube by the NBA socials lot, by the looks of it, which was, yeah, that was quite a cool moment. I had someone say, or Billy sent that to me, and then someone else sent it to me and just went, PAL content in the video, and that was quite surreal. That was quite a special moment for me, especially. There's me talking here in Berlin, doing something I've always wanted to do for a long time. And yeah, it's a nice recognition of the effort that's gone in over the years, and a nice little reminder for me that life has changed a lot, and I'm lucky to be where I am and getting to do the things that I love with people I enjoy spending my time with, basically.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong as well. BBL put a lot of that in their comms videos as well, because I think the Turkish fans absolutely love that content.
And I owe them so much for that, because it's. Everybody always speaks about an esports or a brand building this, that, and the next. I'm not useless at that. I could be if I prioritize that, but I don't, because for me, service to the team, to those 5 players, is way more important than building my brand, even if it does kill me off in terms of longevity of career. I'd rather hope that my work speaks for itself. But if other people are going out of their way to really promote me and my personality, etc., how I do the things that I love doing, then yeah, I'm just very grateful for them for doing that as well. Especially when it's in another language. Like, that's the other thing that I've really loved about being with BBL this year, is everybody in the organization, sort of outside of our team, from team manager to sort of general operations manager to the socials, like everybody has been, even though it's the first time they've had an English-speaking team or a non-Turkish-speaking team, everybody's been so happy and so helpful to engage with those of us who are far less capable at speaking different languages, no matter how we try terribly, and still really willing to go and give that all the support and love that they feel it deserves, even if I think, there could be far more useful things they could be doing rather than promoting me.
Like more fitness videos. Well, I won't go into that.
I think I need that more than anybody else, but we're losing the weight slowly, so we get that video was,
To finish, as always, I like to take a little bit of a look forward. I'm sure that's what a lot of the BBL fans have been sitting here going, why is he talking about Foul Court? Why is he not talking about what's going to be coming up in the next split? So, firstly, I just want to ask, what has been going on with BBL in the downtime? Because obviously, you said you had probably 2 days practice before fully with the team.
Yeah.
I'm guessing everybody's been back to work maybe a bit earlier than you would have done with the amount of time you have.
Yeah, definitely. So the way that we set it up is that we gave the guys, the players, sort of around 10 days off, I think it was. We said we were going to get back to practice on the 12th. We didn't. We adjusted plans slightly. We delayed things slightly. And we've been practicing in this last week, so 3rd week of February, focusing a lot on a lot of the issues, the habitual issues that we had, in terms of mostly our fundamental stuff, that we felt that we underperformed or weren't consistent enough with and hence lost games because of. So we really wanted to address those things first and hopefully set ourselves up with better sort of fundamental skill sets for the rest of the year, basically. And then we will slowly get to a point where we are introducing new content, updating stuff, etc., bringing in the stage 1 version of us.
Okay.
And we've gone through a lot of how we want that to look like, and again, sort of sticking with the plan that the plan to progress our style, certainly strategic style, in ways that aim to get us closer to the way that we think is the best way of playing the game, basically. You can't get to straight away. You can't get to with the logistical restrictions we've had, etc., straight away. And so we're just building with time, really, and working around all the other logistical issues as we go.
Well, that's the other one. Do you know who you're playing stage 1 with?
At the time of recording, no.
Okay.
We all obviously absolutely want Chiwa to be here. Like, that is our number 1 priority and goal. There is no question in anybody's minds. Like, we've been scrimming with him this whole time as well. Like, we've not got somebody else in before stage 1 to scrim with, because we want Chiwa involved. He is absolutely the right fit for our team and is absolutely the person that we want to have playing on the stage. And so at this point, we have absolutely not scrimmed with anybody else or anything.
So is Vac not involved in this at the moment?
No, so Vac's not been involved with this at the moment so far, because again, our intention is to fully play with Chiwa, as we hope to do in the first place. But yeah, we're still working our way around, not only with Chiwa but also with some of the other players as well. Logistical issues that we go in with a sort of 3-4 week general forecast and an in-detail plan for the following week, and then oh no, things have changed with 24 hours notice. Okay, readdress things, shuffle things around, etc. Let's get the most out of our practice time that we can, and whatever is within our control is we will control to the best of our abilities, and whatever isn't, we'll sit back and watch happen, basically.
Okay. Well, luckily for me, the EMEA groups finally sort of got revealed. I think every other region got theirs a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Now, from what people's reactions, there's a group of death and a group of not death, and you guys are in the group of not death. From what people are saying, I still think. I will also say, like, when you look at how many teams make it to playoffs,
yes,
if you get eliminated,
yes,
you're not good enough. Like, I think from either group.
I
think that there are teams that we expect to get out, and if, like, say for example, if Fnatic don't make it out of that group because it's a group of death, they failed because the expectation for them is to finish top 3. Exactly. I do agree that, like, when you're purely looking on paper, you might go, okay, this group is slightly tougher. But I also then want to have a look at your group and who you're going to be sort of facing off against. And I think I'm going to try and do this off the dome, which might go very badly wrong. Team Liquid.
Yes.
Foot.
Yes.
Then yourselves.
Yes.
You've got Koi.
Yes.
You've got KC.
Yeah.
And
Gentlemen.
Giant. Oh, no. Gentlemen. Okay. That was the one I forgot.
Yes. Which, obviously, it's a group that we're happy about. We feel like we can probably put in a pretty good performance against any of those teams. What everybody kind of has to remember is a lot of people have got a much better opportunity to learn now than they did in the off season. They've played, they've learned, they will be learning from mistakes, they will be improving massively, and the longer format of the stage 1 and stage 2 events requires a different way of planning or a different way of approaching not only how you practice, but also how you play as well in a lot of cases.
Well, you get a week to adapt.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
That's it. Like,
and
rather,
that's the
some games
thing.
are a day or two when it comes to kickoff. That's always the brutality of that event.
So there's things that work in kickoff that won't work in stage 1 and won't work in stage 2, which, as I said, is something that we've been very conscious of when planning our strategic progressions. I fully expect those teams to put up a better performance than they have done in kickoff. But for us, then it has to become, right, can we stay ahead or catch up with other teams if that's what needs to be done, and yeah, then just take each game as it comes, depending on what the order is. I believe, or I've been told a couple of times by people within the org, funny enough, the Turkish guys, that the last 2 years when Foot and BBL have been in the same group, that's been the last game of the groups. So I'm very interested to see if that happens. We were all joking, saying, right, well, imagine, right, we've qualified for playoffs already and Foot have to beat us to qualify for playoffs. That'd be a great win to get.
But that is what happened, but the other way round.
Yes.
Last year, it was
literally
BBL needed a map.
Yes.
And Foot
to own them.
Foot bodied them. It was one of those days where it came down to the wire, and that was after BBL had a pretty damn good season as well. I think they deserved playoffs, if I'm being brutally honest. I want to look at the teams within the group and wonder who you're sort of excited to play against, because obviously there's a lot of people you'll know. I think the obvious one is Foot as well, though, for like the Turkish fans. But where would you go?
The great thing about this group for us is we have something against every other team in the group. Which is fantastic motivation, I'll tell you that. Obviously, you've got Foot. I don't think you can understate the rivalry between Foot and BBL. Obviously, kind of the power levels in the Turkish derby have changed over the years. Probably more BBL's way early on in Valorant's lifespan, and then you've got Foot definitely being the better team over the last couple of years, and hopefully us this year going to flip that again on its head. But that's going to be a very, very popular matchup. Team Liquid, we lost to, and now they've gone all the way to Bangkok. We gave them 18 first bloods on our map pick and lost it 13-11. I think there was at least one 1v3 and maybe another just as criminal round in there as well. And then we lost the 10-6 lead on, again, a map that we'd been very strong at on the side that should have favoured us. So yes, we believe that we should have beaten them. Obviously, Yampi's relationship with Liquid has been storied, and rightfully so. They've got some very good people in there as well, that we have close relationships with, and we have a lot of reason to want to beat them as well. Koi, massive fan base, obviously, very, very popular, quite similar or very passionate, I should say.
This is going to boil down to you wanting to beat Gorilla, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I can see that coming a mile off.
The fan bases are, of course, very similar to the Turkish. But yeah, when three of your closest friends in Valorant are running the coaching staff on the other side, or are the coaching staff on the other side running the whole team.
Three of the nicest human beings on the planet.
I don't give them that much credit.
They are very lovely people.
No, absolutely.
Too nice, if anything.
And I am definitely nowhere near as lovely. So I absolutely want to beat them. And then you've obviously got Gentlemates as well, who love the way they do a lot of their stuff. Again, Jate, who's also on their coaching staff. Another friend of ours that I would absolutely love to beat.
Profek and Mini.
Yes.
That's going to be a battle, but for different reasons.
Absolutely.
They've both been insane. That's been one of the most fun things, which I think then looking back to Go Next, you go, shit, that could have been a genuinely ridiculous roster. With
and it was a lot of the times, and they're both showing their individual talent massively. So I think you look at that, you look at the matchup between two friends there. Again, same thing with Liquid and us with Yampi and them. Same thing with myself and Scott and the people over at Koi. There's a lot of sort of close friendships here that make us really, really want to win that bit more. So absolutely, we're up for it, and I don't think the draw. Maybe if they'd put Fnatic in our group instead of KC, that would have been the ideal group for us in terms of how much we want to win.
You didn't really say what was KC? What do you want to?
KC, I mean, KC have a very good way of doing things. I think that's more of for me as a coach, I think that is a big matchup to go up against someone like Eng
and Sadak as well.
Eng and Sadak, you look at how storied they both are, and it's right. Okay, how good are the systems that I want to implement, how good is our ability to play and perform when it counts.
I'll give you one more as well.
Against two of the people that are very, very good at that.
Elite?
There's also a little bit of that as well. Again, you've got that personal relationship there where, okay, it just gives you that, hopefully, you step up to it and you embrace that challenge and it gives you that extra edge on the day.
Well, my next question is, do you think it's going to be tougher now that people are going to be watching your team? Because I think going into kickoff, you're a team coming in with rookies, people that I don't think most teams would have even looked at, if I'm being brutally honest. And then also you had a stand-in, but you did very well with what you had. Like you beat a team like Fnatic, you beat GX. So people are definitely not going to do that again.
No, I would hope that there was a little bit more attention paid. Well, actually, maybe I hope not. I hope no one pays attention at all. But I would expect there to be a little bit more attention, at least paid to, okay, what were they doing? How were they trying to do it? What is this team about now that we seem to have got ourselves, at least after kickoff, into a position to compete for good results throughout the season. I don't think I think we will still probably be viewed as a somewhat flash in the pan team until we can prove otherwise. I think you have to be ready for people, as we said before, to adapt more during stage one anyway. And so the way that we prepare and learn strategy is reflecting that in a way that we can kind of stay ahead of those adaptations, stay ahead of the game a lot of the time. But I enjoy that massively. I love the mind games about things. We will fully embrace what we believe gets us advantages when we need it in and out of the game. But I don't think it will take us too far away from what we had planned anyway in terms of how we want to progress, how we want to evolve the way in which we do things, getting ever closer to the kind of optimal way of doing things in our minds. There will need to be a little bit of more mental support now towards the players, because now we are in a position where we set expectations for ourselves, and those expectations are not, guys, if we can get playoffs by the end of stage one, that would be good. It's now, guys, we want to be in Toronto. We believe we're capable of being in Toronto. We believe we're capable of being in Paris by the end of the year. And it's about managing that very fast-paced shift of our own expectations for ourselves, probably more so than managing the shift of other people's expectations of us, if that makes sense. I think we're prepared for the latter already.
So I kind of, without revealing too much, I kind of wanted to ask, in this break, what has your main focus been? Like, has there been something where you go like, okay, after this event, I now know that that's what we need to work on the most?
I don't think this does reveal too much, because I think a lot of teams probably go about this in terms of it's your fundamentals, your low-level individual and team play skills that you need to be able to deliver on every single time you get on the stage. I don't believe that we lost the games we lost because we were outplayed in terms of any sort of grand strategy, etc., at like a super macro level. I think we've proven that we've got some pretty good ideas and pretty good approaches to things. However, it always comes down to who's going to play well on that day. I always describe it as performance efficiency, right? How much of your in-practice environment performance can you translate over to your in-officials performance? And how much do you lose going from one environment and everything that's required from it to another? And I have my sort of own philosophy about that. So a lot of it will be reinforcing the things required to have to not lose as much as possible, and really focus on, okay, how can we get the very basic bits done of, we phrased it a bit crudely perhaps at some points, but I think it gets the point across of making tier 2 players tier 1 players, if that makes sense. We have rookies who are very talented and very good at certain things that they do. We've now seen that our peak performance, when we play to all of those strengths and we get it right, can really take us all the way to the top. But when we get it wrong and we fall into playing our weaknesses too much, then actually we can fall very, very far short of where we think we can be and should be. So yeah, it's about now, okay, strengths are good, let's change it, let's take our peak performance and evolve it slightly. But first, let's make sure that we absolutely get the basics done well and hopefully set ourselves up for better, more consistent performances throughout the year by focusing on those basic bits of individual decision making, micro team play, how to play in certain advantage or disadvantage states throughout the round, how to recognize, I think, is one of the biggest things under the pressure, under the chaos of what can be a mid-round in Valorant, what the advantage, disadvantage state of the round is, and make smart decisions based on that. So yeah, drill the basics, get people talking more, get people in the server more, because we know that evolving our good stuff can actually potentially take us a long way if we don't have an awful flaw to our performance. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, to finish, we've already spoken about PAL core, so I feel like it's only fair we give a little message to the BBL fans, because I think, I'll be honest, I think this is the first year in a while where there is some hope. There is like chances for this team to go far. So if you have a message for them at home, what is coming in stage one?
What's coming in stage one? It should be something that is even more exciting than what we've shown so far. Something that hopefully gives everybody at home even more hope, that I'm hoping that we've given you throughout our performances in kickoff, and something that you can really, really get behind. Some more entertainment. It's definitely not going to be perfect. There's definitely going to be losses. But what motivates us to keep going, to keep learning when we have those bad days, to come back from the arena, get home, wake up the next morning and go again, is the genuine love that we get from so many people. And that means the world to the Turkish guys in the team, of course, but it also means so much to those of us that have absolutely no right to any of the support a lot of the time that you guys give us, whether it's in Turkish, whether it's in English, whether it's in literally any other language. We love it. It means a lot to us, and it motivates us through when things have been difficult, and it will motivate us still when things inevitably become even more difficult in the future as well. So thank you very much for everybody. Hopefully you have enjoyed what we've done so far, but I promise you'll enjoy the stuff coming up even more.
Damn, it's tough to follow, isn't it? It's really tough to follow. Well, either way, guys, I hope you enjoyed this interview / strategy / the coaching couch. It is, of course, the very first episode. Make sure to tag below who you would like to see. I don't know if Pal has any ideas, but either way, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.